Yeah. Okay. Geneva, what you do? Okay. Let me just get set up. Oops. Okay. Oh, before we get started, I wanted to about today. I wanted to just check in. I know last time that we talked, we talked about next year and the position item common and all of that. So just wanted to follow up with, let's see, Kara, Christy, who's here, and Bridget, if you were able to connect with any of them yet.
So they reached out. I haven't reciprocated yet just because I'm still waiting to hear back on the confirmed date I'm flying out.
Okay.
Just because that's when they have park testing, so it's a little fishy if they can pull a few students. So they're going to get back to me.
Okay.
So I'm still waiting to hear back from them.
Gotcha. You're trying to go up in March, April?
End of March.
End of March, okay. Could be helpful just to like start the conversation with Kara, Christine, Bridget, because it's just context building, regardless of that specific date.
Yeah.
I know that Kara's got spring break because she teaches at Yale Haynes year-round coming up, and Christine's got a couple of like work things, so just so that you get something on the calendar to either chat over the phone or whatnot.
Okay.
Might just be helpful. All right, so I know that one of the things that we've been talking about over the last few touch points has been, especially with the move, is like your gorgeous tree and having your kids be goal aware and like, this is where I am, this is where I want to go this year and beyond. So we'd just love to hear how that's been going over the last few weeks, since I know we didn't really talk about it last week when we chatted.
Okay, so students are really excited to see their letters slowly starting to move, and they're doing a better job of tracking their growth and their reading level. In one of the IEP meetings today, my student was able to explain her Lexile score to her mother and explain like the age group, because she knew that saying, you know, the letter P doesn't really, you know, her mom doesn't know what that means, so she was saying that, you know, I read it like a second, third grade level, and I'm reading like at an 8 or 9-year-old age group. And so she, and I realize this is with my higher groups, they are able to understand and break down what the actual letter correlates to in terms of your age group or your grade. And my lower groups are still having trouble wrapping their heads around it. They just think their goal needs to be to get to Z, as opposed to just tracking their growth and seeing how much they've grown in terms of grades or years. So I'm trying to come up with a way to break it down and I guess on a smaller scale for them to be able to visually process, as opposed to just seeing themselves move up these letters, to like see how much growth they've actually had between letters, I guess, if that makes sense. So, I mean, they have that understanding, and when I gave you the data, I also had check-ins with them to explain to them. But even, I mean, just the whole idea of time is a lot for some of my lower functioning students. So, I was thinking of making a chart, and it could be just like a timeline, I guess, and they can kind of check off, like with each month of growth they've had, they can kind of tick it and like accrue a certain number of check marks in order to see how much growth they've had and over the time span. But that, I mean, that's just one idea. I'm still kind of trying to figure out a way for them to visually, they all do have a goal of growing 1 year in reading. My goal for some of my students was to push them to think 2 years, and I do have a few students who are on the way there. But for my lower students, the goal right now is 1 year of reading growth. So I was trying to give them like a visual tracker that they could shade in to see that, because right now they're just tracking their progress daily in class.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out a visual for them to either shade in or check off and have it accessible in their folder similar to their daily progress tracker.
So I think when you sent me that data, it stood out to me that your lower classes, both in terms of reading level, are also your classes with your, like, not the class that we saw today. So the other two classes are also the classes with the less amount of total reading growth, which to me just like makes the stakes even higher, to not only invest them and get them on board, but also to like make movement. I'm wondering if, like, when you say 1 year of reading growth for that group of students, how much of that is feasible and how much of that is ambitious?
So looking at the fact that we're at like a midpoint, most of my students in my middle block have grown, like they've been staying consistent with the year. They've had about 6 months of growth. Some have had maybe 3, some have had 9, but for the most part they're just kind of trucking along. My lower group is progressing at a much slower rate, and I know that that's just because their cognitive functioning levels are significantly lower, but I do have some students who have shown progressive, like 6 months of growth up to this point. So I think it is feasible for a majority of the students, but there are between like 5 and 8 between those 2 classes that I know even a year of growth isn't feasible for them.
My phone's over there. I wanted to pull up. Do you have your the
My data?
document that you? Yeah, so we can like actually talk about specific kids.
This is gonna be bad. This blocks.
It'll be fine. Because I recognize that context matters. I worry that not pushing your kids, regardless of what movement they have or have not made, because as you said, right, there's a range. Some have made a third of the year, or some of them have made 9 months.
Yep.
I worry that even when understanding that context, you're lowering the expectations for still just aiming for a year of reading growth.
Okay.
We can pull it down to the bottom class, right? Because that's the class, class with the, or I guess it's the meat. Well, it's the combination of these 2 classes.
Yeah. So
like I'm thinking for like Jahi, Samira, how do you say it?
Jovan.
Jovan.
Well, I don't know, because I think that at this point, the fact that they've only progressed 0.25 years, but still wanting to push them to get to a year of growth, I mean, we're trying to make up for lost time now. So I feel like the work has become, I think that the work has become more rigorous in the sense that students are pushing themselves past their comfort level. And I know that at least with Jovan, right now, his big problem is like an auditory processing, and then he also has speech and communication problems. So I've been pushing him to come during lunch, and I've been pushing him to stay back when we have like TOP come to reach out to us and do programs with them. He'll stay back and he'll do some extra work with me in terms of reading fluency and decoding. So we're trying to make up for lost time by pulling him in. Well, he's actually the only one because Jahi refuses and Samira refuses. So, but parents are on board with them staying after school. But it's just been a challenge to get them to stay.
Are you happy with this data?
Oh no.
Right. Are your kids happy with this data?
Overall, most of the students are okay with the data. I did explain to some of them what it did look like, and some of the students were very disappointed in themselves, which obviously made me disappointed in myself because I felt like, you know, it's a team effort. But
who's a particular student? Would be, maybe it could be this class or another class.
So Samira
Okay.
is Samira was actually switched out of this class because like you can see that she's at a much higher level than all of the other students, so the work wasn't challenging her. So we switched her into the middle class, and the work is becoming very hard because she's just on that cusp. So we're pushing her to stay in that class and to stay at that level, and she's just giving a lot of pushback because it is significantly harder than the last class she was in. But she is disappointed in the lack of growth that she's had.
So going back to that idea of like, really the ideal goal, and going back to like institute, right, is like ambitious and feasible, and you're trying to get to that sweet spot, right? I get that like where Samira is right now, to even just get her to do 0.75 years in the next 5 months is going to be intensive work. That being said, regardless of the actual growth that's going to be made, what is the difference in the message that is being sent to Samira between you've been given 1 year of school, what grade is she in? 11th, 12th?
She's 9.
9th, oh, okay. So this is your 9th grade year, right? You have 12 months or 9 months, you should be making a year's worth of growth, and the message that is sent to her that you have a year, 9th grade, you should be making 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. What's the different message that's sent?
I mean, at least right now, like so at the beginning of the year, our goal was individual. Like every student had a specific goal. Like I want to get to a level Z, and they're at a level B, or like I want to be able to do A, B, and C in order to get this. And so everybody had individual goals, and then when we got to this midpoint and everyone saw their growth, we, as a class average, once we saw our growth, we decided to see what our big term goal would be. So I guess maybe also reconnecting with that individual goal, because they've changed since they've seen their growth. Their goals have changed. Like Samira's goal, I don't even know where her folder is. Samira's goal was to go from a level H to like a level L. So she wanted to do like big growth. She wanted to do a big jump. And then after she saw that she's only made 2.5 years of growth, she like lessened her goal. She made it, okay, well maybe I'll just get to a J instead of an L. So she's trying to, I guess, cut herself some slack.
And what is the impact of that?
I feel like she's selling herself short. I think that if she continues to, she just has a lack of confidence in this specific class since she's moved, because instead of being the highest achiever in this class, she's now the lowest in this middle class. So she's feeling kind of defeated. I have asked her to come in every once in a while to my last block of the day for like the last 15 minutes to help students with like homework if they finish up early, or to come in and tutor to kind of get that confidence back. And she also just misses the students that are in that class. So to try to get her reconnected with this group as well, and hopes to build her confidence back up. But it's still a work in progress. She's only been in that class for about 3 weeks.
I think what I'm hearing is just that she was the highest student in her class, then getting moved, and she's now not. And that is a huge adjustment.
Yeah.
And then I'm also hearing that like she readjusted her goal midway through because she didn't see a lot of progress. And then you saying that like that is cutting her potential and cutting her belief in herself short. What could you do to mitigate that?
So she's been staying after school to go over assignments with me, but she's also been checking in to work on her bio project, which is worth 80% of our overall quiz grades for this term. And she's feeling really nervous about presenting, so she's been practicing after school, and she's been coming in early. And I think just in terms of getting comfortable with her new classmates and working with the small group of girls who are in her class, she's becoming more confident in her group. So when we're doing small group work, she is more likely to participate when we're doing it like direct instruction with Failure Free. Whole class, she still is feeling really reserved about sharing out, and she's still pretty self-conscious. But I want her to be able to track her growth and see that she is still progressing, even though she's in a much harder class, and also point out the fact that this class is much more difficult than the other class you were in. And the whole reason you're in this class is because we challenged you in that lower class, and it was too easy for you. You were finishing your work in half the time that the other students were. So obviously you need to be pushed more, and just think of how capable you are, the fact that you basically, tested out of this group and now you're in a higher group.
Yeah.
So
have you had that conversation with her?
We had a check-in after, and it wasn't, I guess it wasn't worded that way exactly, because she was, I did tell her, like, you the work in this class is too easy for you. I mean, you've mastered all of this. You don't need, like, we can revisit this and we can constantly go back to this stuff, but you've got this stuff down. You finish your work in half the time as the other students. Like, you would be better off being in a rigorous class that, you know, has students that are also at your level. And then she got really self-conscious and said, nobody's really at my level. And then when I showed her the data, without the student names, but I did show her the data, and showed her that there were several students who were on her reading level, she was more comfortable. But I think that just seeing that those students have better fluency and decoding skills because they've been in this class all year, and those are the things we've been focusing on, whereas that lower class we're focusing on, you know, RTI and letter recognition. So I think that we just keep saying, like, we're catching up, we're like making up for lost time.
Yeah.
So
I think there are 2 quick fixes that I would suggest for Samira. One is you need to have another check-in. You need to revisit that conversation. And explicitly celebrate, again, her strengths for why she was moved from one class to the other. Because she actually was moved because of her strength. And then the second is, or the second thing that you need to do in that conversation is reframe what is possible and her goal. And then I think the second thing is she's clearly invested in your relationship. She's come in before and after school. She's like working on the bio stuff. She's increasingly getting comfortable from how you describe it. Use that time to do some one-on-one mini lessons on reading. Like, actually, if this was just looking at class, I know that she's not in this class anymore, but like if this was she's in the middle one. Okay, let's go to the middle one. Okay, so like she's in a group with like she would be grouped with a lot of, maybe not level wise, but like on your radar, a lot of the students who are 0.25 years. Like she's in the group that really needs extra intervention.
Yeah.
If she's already come in before and after school, do a 15-minute lesson, do a 10-minute lesson. Hey, we're gonna work on our bio project. We're gonna work on serial box, but before we get there, remember what we were working on earlier today? Let's just do 10 minutes of really drilling that down.
Okay.
She's coming. You've got her hooked. My question for you is related actually to this reframing the goal piece of like, what is a goal that is, like you said earlier, she's cutting herself short. And we talked about ambitious feasible. What is a goal in which you and you are not letting her off the hook and she's not letting herself off the hook? What would that goal be?
I mean, I still think that she can reach her original goal because that's where a majority of the students that are in her group, they're all at that level now. And she's already working at that reading level. Like she's needing remediation and she's near mastery and she hasn't mastered it yet. But I mean, I think the fact that if she acknowledges that she's already reading and doing work at that level, like yes, she's struggling with it and she's not getting A's and 100%, but she's doing the work. She's doing it with instruction and guidance, and by the end of the year, she could easily be at this level. She could be at an M or an N frustrational at this point. I mean, I think that she just needs to, I think that if she can see that she's already doing the work on that level, that was her end of the year goal, I feel like she might, I think that it would build her confidence. I also think that she might feel a little less lost in that group, so. Amen.
Like, she can do this.
Yeah.
What you just described are things that she can do. What are things that you need to do to support her to be able to do that?
I don't know.
Like, you're gonna have a conversation with her.
Yes.
What do you need to do as her teacher to be able to message that in that conversation?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that she already knows that she can come in and we can work on anything that she feels that she's really lost on, because normally she checks out when she's working on something and she just doesn't get it. I've been looking at her, like her specifically, her exit slips and her and her do nows, because they're like 7 minutes, and like that shortened amount of time with a more rigorous worksheet is overwhelming for her, whereas before when she was in the last class she would go bing 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 and be done in 2 minutes. So I've also told her that all she needs to do for the do now and exit slip is go through and do the things that she's like, bam, I've got this down, I know this. Anything that she feels like I'm kind of hesitant about, she goes through in circles, and then we usually go back and revisit those things. And things she's completely lost on, I tell her to just give it a try, and then we can see where she's at, and we'll also go over them. So she does have like a way of like coding like what she knows, what she's got down. So I mean, we've set up classes that way too. And I mean, looking through her exit slips, it's also, I've been trying to format the exit slips for that group in general to be progressively more rigorous. So like the first few will be like, boom, she's got it, she's feeling confident, she's got the first 2. The second one's a little tricky, maybe I don't understand it, so she goes and tries but circles it. And then the last one's usually like the really challenging one, and it's usually about the next lesson, and it's to make a prediction, and that's usually what she's stuck on when it comes to like inferential questioning. So
I also wonder if that's what you then focus on in your like mini tutorials in the morning and afternoon, like before and after school starts.
Okay.
Like if you're seeing that trend with her, that's something that you can then work on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the students in that group across the board really struggle with inferential questioning, so most of that group will stay after school on Mondays and Wednesdays, so
that could be a focus.
Yeah.
All right, what is this all causing you to think about the things you need to do with all of your students related to goal awareness, or to goals and the expectations that you are setting for them and that they are setting for themselves?
Well, we all invested in like our class-wide goals. I think that we need to revisit our individual goals and just kind of reinvest in those as well. I mean, they constantly have the reminders, they constantly are looking at the tree, and they all have designed their own leaves. And I think that if I can just, I want to figure out a way for them to be able to track their goal visually. And I've been looking online for like some sort of chart, or like a thermometer, bar graph, something.
Yeah.
And they like fill them up for the medicine and whatnot. So I wanted students to have that to look at, and then they would also be able to go back. They've also been looking into they've been grading one another with a student rubric on revising and editing their bios, and that's in my highest class right now. And right now I think that it's going really well with that group, because on Tuesdays they're going through a student's like second draft, and then they're noticing mistakes that they've made in their own, and so they'll circle those mistakes, and then they'll collaborate with that peer and be like, hey, I made that same mistake, can I go back? And then so it's like so they're both the groups are really invested in their projects right now, and their projects are connecting to their goals, because they're working on public speaking, they're working on their reading and writing levels, and their individual goals on their IEPs. So I can also pull those goals out as well, because I mean, a lot of my seniors right now are like, I have to get all my goals on my IEP done, and public speaking is one of them, and writing is another, and so this project is, they think it's like their ticket out of here.
Well, and what I love about the project is that it is thinking so expansively and holistically. It's not just reading, it's not just writing, it's not public speaking, it's all of those things. I think you can now take it to the next level of like, 1, getting students to track all of that, and 2, connecting it to the fact that like you need these skills in the real world. You need these skills to not only get through all your IEP, but like survive in the real world. Go to college, get this job, go to vocational training, whatever it is. I wonder if, like with levels, it can sometimes take a while to get to the next level, but you can still make, for instance, like staying at H, right? Like she still did make 0.25 years of reading growth, and so even if you converted a bar graph of years growth, then like as you do running records and it increases numerically in the years of growth, regardless of the letter, that's still something that they can shade in.
Okay.
Because you can be doing running records how often are you doing them right now?
2 weeks.
Right? So every 2-3 weeks, you're gonna get some data point that is then more current than just this overall mid-year.
Okay.
And they can start seeing, they may still be at an H, but they've made 0.08 years of reading growth, which is exciting in 2
Yeah.
weeks, and they could plot that.
Okay, that's good. I like that idea.
I think the big thing is expectations. Like, in reacting to this data, you were really upset because you wanted to get to a higher place with your kids. If every student, even those that did better and have made more growth, shifts their goal downwards, we're losing a tremendous opportunity of what the next 5 months can be. And so I think really smart for you to pull out the, like, we need to reinvest in the individual goal. I think a part of that is getting real that the goal of 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, whatever it is, but not just one, is still possible. And really lighting the fire under that.
Okay.
Thoughts?
I agree, and I think the big thing right now, well, the big takeaway is actually, I do love this idea of being able to have them track their own growth by years as opposed to reading level, because while it's great for them to see themselves tracking up along that tree, it's a very slow process with the levels as opposed to actually seeing 0.08 years of growth. I mean, I feel like regardless, they can still constantly be shading. Every 2 weeks, they're like going up and up, and I think that might also be better for them to visualize and see. And definitely reinvesting in the individual goals, because we had a great conversation class-wide of what our like class-wide goal of growth was, and students across the board were like, we can help each other and we can like keep pushing one another and get to that level, and we have a couple of bar graphs that are being laminated, but we have a couple of bar graphs that they're going to be responsible for shading in for class-wide growth, and I mean, they're invested, but I also think that like that's the like class-wide picture. They still need to have that individual investment in why they're in the classroom every day. So I really like that we can revisit that.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears a little bit to today. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, so take me through what your goal for today was.
Like my objective?
Yeah, like what were you hoping to accomplish?
Okay, so our big focus today was fluency. In order to support comprehension. So students would be able to read the passage and then answer a selection of factual and inferential based questions.
And that was in which station?
The direct instruction.
The direct. So what, because when I came over it seemed like it was vocabulary instruction. So where was the passage? I just want to get context.
Yeah, so the passage is what they read aloud in the worksheet, and then we go over the comprehension questions, but first we introduce the vocabulary
before they read the passage. Okay,
yeah.
Got it. Okay, helpful. So what actions did you take today that helped you get your students to improve their fluency in supporting their comprehension?
So we really focus on the vocab word. We focus on the context of the word, and then we try to put it into our own sentences. We have a discussion of the meaning, and I mean, it's just drill and repetition so they can become more comfortable with using it in context.
And anything else that you would call out as like strengths that you saw either in the specific lesson with direct instruction or just how class went overall?
I know that I have several students who are really earphones lighting up.
Oh, I think it's fine. I think it's just my right. Yep, you're good. Okay.
I think in terms of, I'm always really impressed with some of the students who just have a knack for determining the meaning of a brand new word they're completely unfamiliar with. And even using context clues in a conversation. So if we're talking about the word miniature, and then and you know, Jacob was like, it means small, right? Mini, small, like a mini house or mini golf, and just being able to break it down and to pull from real life what they already know about the word and then to use it in that context, it's always really impressive. And then there are some vocab words that they're just completely lost to because it's never been used in conversation.
Marvel.
And yeah. So, but they, although, and I'm bummed you guys missed it, I had one student who was like, isn't that a comic book? I was like, oh, yeah, it is.
It is a comic book.
So, but I mean, once they do use it in context and they have a better understanding of it, we get like incentive points for using it in conversation in class during whole group shareouts. So, like the big word that it's kind of died down a bit, but they would say bellow. Anytime I raised my voice, they'd be like, "Look out, guys! Miss Mandel's about to bellow," and like that would be like the funny shtick. So, so they are doing a better job of using the words in conversation and in context and using it in their writing. And I mean, this was our first day looking at these brand new words, so we're going to keep looking at them for the rest of the week. But it usually takes a week to get through a new set of vocabulary words.
Okay, that's helpful context. So I wanna zoom in actually on like vocab, since that is something that you do regularly. But before I do, there were some strengths that I just wanted to call out in addition to the ones that you just named. In that, just some things that we've like worked on over the last year and a half. Of like, I was just taking pause at one point and like transitions, and like the transition time itself was like, oh, like yeah, like could it be faster in some ways and with individual kids? Sure, but like where it's been in the past, like this is much more of a well-oiled machine, and that's really exciting. And then all the conversations that Christy, Kimberly, and I had, I know we spent a lot of time already talking about goal awareness and like really reinvesting, but every kid we talked to had a goal. Like they knew that this class was going to make them better readers, and they had a goal outside of Baloo. And I think that's credit to a lot of the hard work that you've already put into those check-ins, into the trackers and the folders. And I think that how conversational they were, and like being able to describe like, yeah, I want to be a better reader, and then I want to go to this school. And I mean, Kevin was talking about getting into UDC and Montgomery Community College, and he wants to be a forensic scientist and ride in an ambulance.
Yeah.
And just the openness and dialogue was something that I had not seen across the board from all students in past conversations with kids. And I think just all the hard work that you've been doing, both with public speaking, whether it's advocating for new resources or goal awareness, I think is paying off. And Christy and Kimberly hadn't been here before, and I know in the past sometimes, and we've had conversations with like strangers can sometimes throw folks off, or be intimidated or feel stigmatized or whatnot, and particularly given the 3 white adults, all of whom were strangers, one maybe they remember, walked in and were able to so freely and openly have conversations with kids is a monumental shift to even where like kids were in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge.
And it was hilarious because they pointed you guys out while you were walking by. They're like, oh, I bet those are them. And I was like, why did you say that? They're like, they're all white, Miss Mandel. It's like, well, yeah, that's the group.
They are.
Yeah.
And yet that didn't inhibit a conversation in a way where I had a long conversation with Kevin, but the conversations that Christy and Kimberly had with Bijan and with Jerome and with Jacob and Marcus, all of them, the foundation of goal awareness is really there. And so I think all the work that we already talked about with goal awareness is just tapping into what's already there, but like making sure that the expectations don't fall off.
Right.
Okay. And I just felt it important to call that out because I know that we've talked about that in the past, and like the hard work is paying off, which is really good. You should feel really good about that. When you think about vocab instruction, what would you say were like the 2 things that worked really well? And then what wasn't necessary? What are like the 2 things that may not like have been working as well today with just the vocab part?
So conversations and being able to verbally put vocab words into context works pretty well with the students. I think that they're inquisitive and they want to learn about a new word, and so they'll try putting it into context, and they take criticism well if they put it into context incorrectly, and then they're like, oh, okay, does it make more sense like this? Because I know that Brittany was writing down a word, and she used it as a noun instead of a verb, and so we walked through it again, and then she wrote it out correctly, and she's like, okay, now I get it. But then at the same time, just breaking down the proper mechanics of writing and grammar, that's just, it's really frustrating because I'm still trying to figure out a way to tie it in, because I want to focus on the mechanics so they're using the vocab word in the right context, because sometimes they'll put an adjective as a verb, or sometimes they'll use a noun as an adjective, and then it doesn't, then they're wondering why their sentence doesn't make sense, and it's because of the breakdown of the actual meaning of the word. And so we'll use it like bellow means to shout. So when Marcus says, my bellow was really loud, and like my shout was really loud, it's a noun or is it a verb? And
right.
So that's a struggle. That is a struggle.
Yep. Yeah. So I agree. I think like generally the curiosity is a strength to pull out, and they're starting to make connections between the words.
Yep.
The use is not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I watched the group with Marcus, Trayvon, and Jacob.
Yep.
Okay, so there was a moment when you guys were doing miniature,
Mm-hmm.
like you called out, and someone, Jacob said it sounded like golf. Trayvon said it was like golf, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then Marcus wrote the sentence around having the miniature basketball hoop on the back of his door. The other two didn't share out their sentences for miniature. And so, the miniature basketball hoop was just a sentence, but there was never a question of like to follow up of like what does miniature actually mean. So my question to you is, what message is being sent to Jacob, Marcus, and Trayvon about the accuracy of what miniature means in that small moment in your lesson?
Okay, well, in that moment, it made it sound like it was irrelevant if the meaning was. I mean, like the meaning was irrelevant.
Right. That like, basically, I don't know in that one tiny moment, and I know this is getting really nitpicky, but also vocabs are like you either get the word or you don't.
Right.
In that moment, I don't think Marcus, Jacob, or Trayvon, even with their investment and with their curiosity, walked away knowing exactly what miniature meant. And I bring that up as one tiny specific moment because at least in that small group, that was the trend. Even with Marvel, when because you corrected it, like, well, is that to strike you? Does that amaze you? A lot of them were using it as a verb, but more so in thinking about the adjective marvelous and not the actual correct use. And so you're investing time in getting them to be exposed to new words, but currently I don't know if they're actually being led to master the meanings of those words or like the actual parts of those words, parts of speech. Thoughts on that reaction?
So the frustrating thing about the program is that they only give you a certain allotment of time in order to introduce these vocab words. So the first day is supposed to be previewing, like to kind of just get a general understanding of the meanings of the words, and then the next. Just make sure this isn't for me because I left the meeting. And there's nothing. And then the next day is diving into creating sentences around the vocabulary words, so you have to have a better understanding of the actual meaning and using it in the right context. And then you start to use it in dialogue, and then you do like a practice dialogue with your peer.
If you're still in the building, please contact the main office. Make sure you stop by the main office.
So I am frustrated because we only get a certain amount of time for them to, preview these words, and if they don't get it, just, try again the next day. And if it gets to a point where they don't, they just don't get the word and the context, then it's kind of like, well, it's time for the group to move on to the next set of words because this is the program.
Right.
So what I have been doing is with the students who do stay back or come in during lunch, we do work on drilling certain vocabulary words, any words that they're struggling with. We go through the meanings. Students are also practicing researching the definitions online and also doing synonym connections. So we do a lot of like words alive maps. So the student will use the vocab word that they're struggling with and they get extra credit for this. They use that vocab word they're struggling with and they have to give me a visual. They have to give me the definition via dictionary.com, and then they also have to put it in their own sentence. They have to give me a synonym. Part of speech, Breitbart, and like if for every words map that they do, they get a point towards their homework completion. So,
I'm curious. I get that the failure-free reading, we're
Yeah.
getting this right, has like a methodology in, right? And you're having to supplement it because your kids aren't necessarily getting it the first time around, right? How, even within that program, how could you just reimagine, even like the 10 minutes that is explicitly devoted to vocab to ensure that it actually is leading to mastery?
I mean, it would be straying away from the failure-free method.
And if that's going to push kids to actually learn?
I mean, yes, I would love to be able to actually break down a vocabulary word, but like not have to settle for like 5 words. I would love to break down, 3 words a week and just kind of cut it down so we can really wrap our heads around a certain set of vocab words. I do feel like 5 a week is a little much, especially for these kids. I think that if we were able to focus on 3 words instead of 5, and then really be able to just dive into a smaller number of vocab words, but with more intensity, I think that they would be able to serve them better.
I think, so what was today day 1 of the week? Okay, so what's the goal of vocab with them on day 1 of the week?
Is to be able to preview and create a sentence with the vocab words.
Okay, and tomorrow is?
Tomorrow is writing.
Writing in which they...
Oh, tomorrow's Special Olympics. But the step 2,
right,
step 2 is writing and sentence structure. So they have to revisit the vocab words, and then they have to use them in the right context of the sentence by using like fill in the blank, and then they would go from fill in the blank to looking at context clues in the sentence to determine which vocab word fits the fits the sentence, and then they would have to go down to the section that's writing your own sentence with the vocab word. So it gets like progressively more rigorous.
So what do students need to be able to do or know about vocabulary in order to be able to do even day 2 of like filling in the blanks? Like what do they need to have essentially mastered by day 1?
The definition.
The definition,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So how did kids master definitions today? And if so, how do you know?
Well, I mean, their exit slip is on the last page of their packets, and I haven't graded it yet. But their exit slip is a quick. It's like a 30-second matchup. So you're matching up the vocab word to the corresponding definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think students will be set up for greater success if it's clearer in the instruction that you are explicitly naming the meaning of words. I didn't hear an explicit like mini lesson for, what were they, Marvel, miniature, and what was the other word? Mechanic. I didn't actually hear a definition. Like I was tracking what students were saying, what you were saying. With Marvel, you went out to marvelous and then shortened back to Marvel and said it was a verb. But actually having kids, like actually teaching them the explicit definition, and then, have you done Frayer model in grad school or not? Okay. So, and I actually have to send you an article on Marzano's. Have you done Marzano's? All right. So I have an article on vocabulary instruction, and that I looked up before our time, and then Marzano's vocabulary philosophy, which is a really great way of teaching vocabulary. That I think if you sit down with those resources, you can then adapt it to the failure-free timeline, but will beef up the rigor and success of the 10 minutes that you are devoting to vocab. But Frayer is really simple. So it's like 4 squares, and then they just put the, here, I'll make you a word, and then, and then you can either do a synonym, antonym, in a sentence, or if you want to switch one of these out, you can do an image, like where they draw the meaning of the world.
Yeah.
But the idea is, so like with mechanic, what was essentially the definition that you had them for?
It's a person that fixes cars.
Person who fixes cars. And now, and then you're probably gonna do synonym and antonym later in the week. So what you could do on this first day is they write the sentence, and maybe this the first day they do the drawing. Okay. This does not take a lot of time.
No. And this is similar to the Words Alive map that we do. It's fitted a little differently, but this is simple for them to kind of just bust out on their own piece of blank paper. This is good.
Is this possible for day one in the failure free?
I think so.
How would this explicit instruction lead to an increase in student mastery of vocabulary?
Well, I know that for my visual learners, they'll be able to give themselves an image to connect to the vocab word, and maybe even what is the phrase where you come up with like a catchword in order to connect you back to the meaning?
Not a hint. Like an
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like a grab word. I can't think of.
like a mnemonic device almost.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, similar. So that could even be a section, like a word that'll connect them back to the definition of mechanic. I think it would be a lot easier for them to absorb. I mean, my students are still figuring out parts of speech. Like that's the thing. Like when I asked them as a mechanic, a noun, an adjective, a verb, they all just shouted out all of the answers. And I was like, well, let's figure out what a mechanic is. It is a person, place, or thing. And they were like, person. And I was like, so that makes it. And they're all like, noun. And so they have those connections, like person, place, thing, noun. They have those those grab phrases that'll help them connect back to parts of speech. They're still breaking down how to construct sentences or how sentences are constructed.
If they aren't given scaffolded practice, though, they're going to be swimming in circles.
Yeah.
I think even if you had just made like on one chart paper or on a sheet of paper that you laminate or whatnot, or just always have like in the manila folder as your like teaching toolkit, where you literally have nouns, adjectives, verbs, and then like you could do words or you could do images of like a person with a face, place, the globe, a thing, a toy or whatever, and then adjectives, like things that describe you, and you can have like emojis or whatever, colors, like just something that will tag, and then verb, action words, and then have like action images, where like literally it's just that, and then ultimately that scaffolding can go away, right? But like without these concrete systems in place, students are just going to shout out answers, like you said, sometimes write things on the sentence board, sometimes not, share out, sometimes not, but they're not going to necessarily be pushed to actually master the meaning of a word or what part it is or how you actually use it in the sentence.
Right. Okay. No, I like this. I like this method. I'll start implementing this.
Tomorrow, for the students who are not at Special Olympics, are the few. What words are you going over with them tomorrow? Is it these same words?
No. So the next time we're all getting there. Tomorrow's a championship, Andrew, so we're all going.
Got it. Okay. So the next time that you have class.
But the last, I always have my last block of the day, which is great because it's also my lowest group. But we only had one vocab word, which was horse. So.
Oh, they literally only have one.
Yep.
Horse.
And like they get more vocabulary words as the text gets progressively more difficult. So.
Got it. Okay. So we have horse.
Yep.
Okay.
Horse
so,
and next.
Horse and next. Oh. Okay. Let's. His speech is next. Right. Okay. Did anyone have a riz yet? You gone over that?
No.
Okay.
We're still on tense.
Got it. Okay. So let's do horse then. And why don't you practice teaching me horse using the Frere model.
Okay.
Would it be helpful for me to model, or?
Yeah, if you want to go
Okay.
on the screen.
All right. Well, I literally just ended my notebook, so I just need a sheet of paper. All right. So. And then we said a noun, a verb, an adjective. We said person, place, thing. The images,
We said action.
action, okay, images, and
Describes.
describes.
Describes a noun. And then
A
definition of it.
noun. Right. Describes a noun, and this is, you know, emojis and colors and whatever. Okay. All right. So, oh, and I was gonna make you a Frere model for yourself. All right, there you go. Okay. So, we only have one word today. Only one word. So today's word is horse. Write that in the middle of your index card. Horse. Great. All right. Now, who can tell me what the first thing is that we always do with new words?
Figure out the part of speech.
Oh, is that what the first thing we do? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Figure out the part of speech. So when you think about a horse, is it a noun, verb, or adjective?
It is a noun.
Why is it a noun?
Because it's a thing.
It is a thing. Great. So remember, which box do we always put our part of speech in?
Well, this is the first time we're doing it, so box one.
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah, we can switch it. Yep, that's cool. Right. So in our first box, we're gonna write noun. All right. What's the next thing that we always do? Let's just assume that this isn't the
Yeah.
first time. That
Okay.
we've done it. What's the next thing that we always do with our new words?
Write the definition.
Write the definition. Great. Okay. So a horse is. Does anybody know what a horse is?
Like my students? Oh
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, I was still.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you're be a
Yeah,
student.
it's an animal.
It's an animal. And what makes this animal different from other animals?
It's really large and you can ride on it.
Yes. So that's exactly what our definition is. So our definition for a horse is a large animal that you can ride and that lives on a farm. I know your definition might not be that long, guys. All right. So we've got our part of speech. It's a what?
A noun.
A noun, and we've got our meaning. So what's the next thing that we do?
Write a sentence.
We write a sentence. So I'm going to show you my sentence first, if they need explicit modeling, right? So I really enjoyed riding a horse out in the country. All right. Now take 30 seconds to write your sentence for horse. All right, turn and talk with your partner. Casey, I know that you're going to be my partner. Turn and talk with a partner and share your sentences.
I saw a beautiful horse at the farm.
Great. Just as another strategy that you
Yeah.
can do to build conversation. All right, share out if you want. You could also, side note, share out if there were like specific things that you wanted. Like, did the student use the word correctly? And did the student spell the word correctly? And did the student have context clues in their sentence, right? Like if you want to ultimately be rigor, because then you could be like, all right, someone share out one of the context clues that their partner sentence has.
Okay.
My person said farm. Okay. All right. So then what's the last thing that we do?
Draw a picture.
Draw a picture. Take 30 seconds and draw your picture. Perfect. Great. All right. Flip it over. Any reactions to my model? Because I can always get better. Things that you like, things that you want to try, things that.
I love the the repetition and the review, like, what's the word? It's a noun. What's the word? It's a noun. We must have said it at least 3 or 4 times before we moved on. And I loved the turn and talk. I really want to tie that in more with direct instruction because it's so hard to have students turn and talk unless we're doing whole groups. So to be able to do it in small group and reintroduce it, I think myself not thinking of that. So that's great. I'm going to definitely have save opportunities for that. I also like the 30 seconds. I don't really give students, I mean, I give them like a 10-second countdown to wrap things up, but I don't really give them like a time frame prior to starting the next step of an activity, so I also really enjoy that.
Great. Let's do next, or let's pick a word that they're going to have that isn't, because they haven't gone over adverbs yet. So what's another word?
4.
4, the number 4. Okay, so I'm going to be the student now and take me through 4.
Okay. So the word that we're going to be, the vocab word we're going to be looking at today is the word for. So can everyone please write 4 in their box? Okay, so let's look at our chart.
Sorry, I'm taking notes.
No, you're good. Can somebody tell me if 4 is a noun, a verb, or an adjective?
It is a an adjective?
Now, why do you think it's an adjective?
It's like if I have 4 apples, an apple's a noun.
Okay, and what is 4 doing? It's describing the noun, right? Okay,
right.
awesome. So let's make sure we put that in which box?
The first one, we always do the first one.
Okay, so we know that 4 is a what?
Noun.
What is it?
I mean adjectives.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, so why don't we come up with a definition? So what does 4 mean?
You got like 4 things.
Okay, so it's a...
It's a number.
It is a number. It is a number and it's talking about an amount, right? So 4 is a number. Can we just do that? Is that going to work as a definition? Because my students, like, visually, I was like, what does 4 mean? Can I time out for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I asked my students, because I was like, that's really tricky to put into a specific, like, visually they all just wrote, they were like, that's my definition. That's
Right.
4, because it's 4,
Right.
this is 4, what else do you want from me? And I was
Right.
like, it's a number.
Right.
And so we left it at that. Is that, I feel like that kind of is.
So, and this is getting meta, and this was, I made a side note of like, what do you do for words that you have multiple meanings of? Because technically 4 is a noun and it's an adjective. So here I think is an important distinction. Is this definition describing an adjective or a noun right now? Technically.
Okay, well technically it is describing. And an adjective.
Great. Well, what would make this show that it's an adjective? You just use this word.
Yeah.
A number that describes how many things you have.
Okay.
Whereas like, if you did noun, then you could be like a number.
Right.
And if you really wanted to push your kids, you could have noun and adjective, definition.
Okay.
A number that describes how much you have.
And I wanted to, goodness, and I wanted to, I want to be able to start doing that because they do understand that like words do have multiple meanings and are used in different parts of speech. But my problem right now is that this group is my lowest group and they can't, not that they can't, they're at a point right now where they're still just breaking down nouns, verbs, adjectives.
So what I would do in this case is one of 2 things. Either day 1 introduce 4 and they just do
As
noun,
an adjective or just a
an
noun.
adjective, and then day 2 do 4 again at the other one, and then they're still working with 4. Or if that's going to confuse them, do 1 week 4 is the noun, next week 4 is the adjective.
Okay.
With your higher level group, you can start doing this. Ultimately, even with your lower level groups, to have high expectations, they should be able to handle this.
Right.
But if you're still wanting to get like a couple weeks of structure in, do that, and then ultimately scaffold up so that you can do this with all your groups.
Okay.
All right, let's go back into role play.
Sorry. So a number that describes. Okay, so then our next step was to put the number 4 and the vocab word 4 into a sentence. So I'm going to write out a sentence first. I saw 4 cats in the barn today. So if you could take 30 seconds to write out your own sentence. Okay, so take the next 30 seconds to turn and talk. Is that what? Okay, so take the next 30 seconds to turn and talk with your partner and to share out your sentence.
I have 4 jackets on today.
Okay. Does anyone want to share out whole group?
I have 4 jackets on today.
Okay, great. And then our last section is drawing out our picture. So let's give ourselves a visual. It's in box 4, which is perfect. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think I get it. I'll obviously need to
Practice.
practice.
All right. What felt stronger about teaching vocabulary in this way than what you did today?
I feel like we were spending a lot more time on the vocab word. I feel like with the time frame that we're given in the program, it feels very rushed. But being able to focus on different aspects of the vocabulary word and then kind of have it come full circle and then share our whole group. I just feel like we were just diving into the meaning of it more so. I think we were parts of speech, we were diving into the definition, putting it into context and giving ourselves a visual, like it was, we were really focusing in on the vocab word. I really prefer this.
Well, and honestly, this isn't 2 things. 1, this still allows you to do failure free. Right? Like you could actually do this on day 1 for all of your words, and then day 2, 3, 4, you could actually give them 30 seconds to review because now they have flashcards. Or you could do a word of the day that they go through this process again with, and then go into the day 2 is fill in the blank with sentence and all of that. But this actually isn't anti-failure free. You can fit this within failure free.
Definitely.
And then the second thing is, this isn't taking more time. This is literally, you got through, I mean, you said it earlier when I modeled, if like we got to part of speech 3 times, you got to it maybe once, and not necessarily with each word. So like, same number of minutes, but actually maximizing student learning.
Right.
Okay. We're not gonna rewrite it, but we're gonna practice with 4 again. You just have it rewritten. This time I want you to practice, and I want, literally modeling what I don't want you to do. You have a tendency, and I didn't tally it in the lesson, but even in the small exercise, you have a tendency of giving directions as questions. So can you, or can I get someone to, and just like state the direction. So like if it's, can I get someone to tell me what number 2 is? Or what will we put in the second box? What do we put in the second box?
Okay.
Or can I get someone to share up?
All right.
Let's have someone to share up.
I'm gonna have to break that habit. I always pose directions as questions, and I don't even realize I'm doing it.
It's just permissive language, whereas like you are demanding that students will learn every single minute. By asking them, it gets into gray area, and it also just takes up more time. Like just state it as a question. I mean, state it as a statement. And then, so the first thing is be mindful of taking out can you or I want. And then the second thing is, and I didn't model this as well, as I could have, but when you get here and you get to the modeling, ask a check for understanding for either context clues or why this is an accurate use of the word for in the sentence. Because when we were talking about earlier, like kids were putting in all the words and sentences, but it wasn't necessarily right. And that's gonna happen on day 1. So just, if you build a habit of when you get to the model, also asking, why is this the right use of for?
Okay.
Because then it can be like, oh, it's described, because what did we say in the definition? It has to describe something. So here, what is the number 4 describing? Cats. So how many cats do we have? 4. That's because it's a what kind of word? An adjective. Okay. Like that's your opportunity. Remember earlier your reflection of like, wow, we talked about part of speech 3 times. Stop yourself here. Why is this the accurate use of it? Because that will then set us up as students to be able to use the word more accurately and not just like throw it into a sentence.
Okay.
Okay? So what are the 2 things that you're gonna focus on in this practice?
not posing directions as questions,
Yeah.
and I guess revisiting the how the meaning of the word is used correctly with context.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And I'll follow along.
Okay, so the vocab word we're looking at today is for. So if everyone could please put the word. Oh, did I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Dang it!
Well, let's keep it tally. You were up to 4 last time.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll start over.
Put
Start
the
over.
word for in the box.
Okay, put the word for in the box. Good.
Okay. So first we're going to figure out what part of speech we're using. So is for a noun, verb, or an adjective?
It is an adjective.
And how do we know it's an adjective?
Because it tells you how many things you've got.
Exactly. So everybody write adjective in the box.
Yep.
I feel like I'm being bossy. Okay. Okay, so next box, we're going over the definition. So what does for mean?
Well, it's a number.
And it's a number that does what? If it's an adjective.
It tells you how many stuff you got.
Great. So it's a number that describes something.
Great.
Great.
You know you're not every time you're going to get verbatim.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, let's put for into a sentence. So I'm going to model a sentence first. So I saw 4 cats in the barn today. Tell me, tell me how I use the word for correctly in this sentence. If we said that it is a number that describes something.
It is telling us how many cats you have.
Awesome. Okay. So can everyone please take 30? Sorry, I did it again. Oh, there's Mr. Walker. Are you good? They did, but they came 40 minutes late and nobody was here, so we just rescheduled for Monday.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know.
No, thank you so much
No
again
problem.
today. I really appreciate it. I made him sit in on my first IDP meeting.
Oh, how'd that go?
He's never sat in on
Right.
an IDP meeting, so he was just,
Steep learning curve.
yeah, but he was great. Okay.
Okay, so you got for number, it tells you how many cats you have.
Yep. Okay. So take the next 30 seconds and create your own sentence.
Okay.
Awesome. Take the next 30 seconds to turn and talk with your partners.
If we're talking
Share out. Does anyone want to share out the whole group?
Let's have 2 people share out their sentences.
Yep.
Or Marcus and Jerome, you shared last time, so I'm blanking on names right. Jacob and
Turn on.
Trayvon, share out this time.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Draw a picture of the word for.
Beautiful. Okay. What felt even stronger that time through than the other time?
I felt like there was more flow to it, but just because I was able to run it again.
Mm-hmm.
So rehearsing needs
Mm-hmm.
to happen. Really difficult checking myself,
Mm-hmm.
posing directions as a question, and I didn't realize how often I do it, but just walking through it this time and being mindful of it, I do it all the time, and I have no idea, and it is a very gray area because it's giving them the option to opt out. Ugh. This is gonna be such a pain to break.
And earlier you said when you, in that moment that it felt bossy. What though, in your reflection that it opts out, what message does it send to keep asking your kids questions as directions?
Wait,
Like what message might that ultimately send your kids when you're like,
posing it as a question?
posing your directions?
You don't have to answer it. You don't have to do it because I'm asking the question of whether or not you can. And whether or not you can, that's also sending a message like, can you do this? Can you not do this? And not having that is saying like, I know everybody can do this. That's why I'm not asking, I'm telling you to do it because the expectation is everybody knows.
And specifically, just because it was the mini group that I saw, what message does that send Marcus, Trayvon, and Jacob as Black boys who have not made a lot of reading growth about their potential to read?
that it's there and that I acknowledge it, they need to acknowledge it because we're coming to the table and we're not asking questions, we're doing it. And it does, and I'm realizing now, I mean, just posing the questions is giving them the option to not share out, which is what half of them did. And I mean, they write the sentences, and I'm able to visually see the sentences, and they're, you know, for the most part, they share out. But on those off days they have, posing it as a question is giving them the chance to be like, cool, I'm going to keep tuning out and not really be present.
Yep.
Man, I'm kicking myself. I had no idea. I say it a lot. I have to work on this.
This is coming full circle. How does doing this, being more rigorous in your vocabulary instruction, being more explicit in your instruction, not letting kids opt out, how does that support your students in the greater goal that they're working towards, that we were talking about earlier, like at the beginning of our conversation of like, hey, actually, no, you don't need to be making 0.7 years of growth in 1 year, and you still need to be making 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. Like, how will this help reiterate that message?
I mean, posing directions as questions, and you know, skipping over vocabulary and revisiting it the next day if we haven't fully mastered it is setting up this expectation that, you know, if you don't get it the next day, there's always tomorrow. But we don't have that kind of time frame, especially in the environment that we're teaching in. So it has to be like, we have to get this. We're getting this now. We're moving on to the next thing the next day. So like, we're mastering this today. That is the expectation. And that is why we're not going to limit ourselves in our goals, and that's why we're not going to limit ourselves with specific vocabulary words. We're going to master them, and then we're going to move on because we only have so much time here.
Yep. I think those actions will show your kids that you are now operating from a place of high expectations, not the intention of high expectations, which I think you've always had, but like actually having your actions align with like, no, you can. Summarize for me what you're taking away from our conversation.
Okay. So the whole thing, I'm gonna go back to Samira. I want to check in with her and make sure that we do celebrate her success. I want to try and check in about having one-on-one lessons with Samira, but also some other students who haven't shown the growth that they were hoping for, as well as myself. I'm going to reinvest in students' individual goals, and with that focus, I think we're also going to set up this is the expectation in class. There's no messing around. We only have 5 months left. The expectation is that we're going to master objectives daily. You're going to continue with your growth, and we're not going to change our growth just because of where we are mid-year. We're going to continue to maintain the goals that we have, and we're going to continue to strive to reach those goals. I also want to I like the idea of having a visual of the parts of speech poster that students can reference in order to better understand what part of speech new vocab words are introduced to. I want to put turn-in talks into my direct instruction. I think that made me really happy when we did that. And I definitely want to use the FRAIR model and incorporate it into the failure-free direct instruction.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't say was whether it's index cards or sheets of paper that they can then keep in a folder.
I do like the idea of index cards that they can reference to study. I think that's good.
Yeah. And then I think the only other thing on your laundry list of things to implement was the visual tracker that converts reading into years of growth. Okay.
Yeah, the bar graph.
So this is a lot. What I'm thinking might be helpful is even just popping in the next within the next like week and a half. I am out of town for selection next week. Otherwise I'd be like in your classroom next week just to like follow up. But I will shoot you an email with a date of like, even if it's just kind of like how we did last time of like, if I can pop in for a little bit and then we find 10 minutes during lunch or after school or whatever, just to chat, just to touch base, because there's a lot of momentum here. There's also a lot of possibility. I just want to make sure that you feel supported and actually implementing it all.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you want from me in the meantime?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm good. This is a lot. I'm gonna soak it all
Soak it
in.
in, and then you go and do it. Awesome. Great.